Welcome to the Sober Living Stories podcast. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of sobriety. We shine a spotlight on individuals who have faced the challenges of alcoholism and addiction and are today living out their best lives sober. Each guest has experienced incredible transformation and are here to share their story with you. I'm Jessica Stepanovic, your host. Join me each week as guests from all walks of life share their stories to inspire and provide hope to those who need it most. Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Sober Living Stories podcast. Today, my guest is Kristine Casart. Kristine is the founder of Mom Vegan Love and the author of the upcoming book, The Unconventional Addict. Originally from Sweden, Kristine now lives in Florida alongside her husband and 3 children. With 9 years of sobriety, she has been on a sober journey, overcoming both trauma and addiction. She has discovered unexpected joys through embracing a vegan and alcohol-free lifestyle. Get ready to be inspired as Kristine shares her story of sobriety with you. Welcome, Kristine.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Can you just take us to the beginning of your life, up and until where alcohol began to profoundly shape your story, and what it looks like today without it?
Wow, that's a big question. What I've discovered in my recovery is that I experienced trauma pretty early on in my life, around the age of 7. There was a perfect storm, feeling really lonely at home as well. And my parents worked a lot to take care of me, but that also meant that I was alone a lot. So I would say that my first addiction was probably to sugar. So starting in the 4th grade, I had a key and I would come home and whatever I could find, I would eat just to soothe. But it was always, it didn't show. I call myself the unconventional addict because my addictions were always kind of within the box. Like on the surface, I looked fine. Mm-hmm. But as I'm discovering now in recovery and through therapy is that I just didn't feel that I mattered, or I didn't feel seen. Because after what happened to me and I told my parents and they didn't believe me, it just shifted something in me. It shifted just not feeling protected, not feeling seen, not feeling heard, like to the other extreme. Like, why would I make something like that up? Right. Obviously, something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And my mind would just, I heard this beautiful share the other day that when you do recovery on your own, you're being led by an asshole. I thought that was really funny because the first 5 years of my sobriety, I did on my own. And I am so hard on myself. I'm not only a recovering addict, I'm a recovering perfectionist, codependent, people pleaser. Yes. Should. You are not enough. So when I'm doing the recovery on my own, it's pretty nutso in here.
Yeah. But, let me ask, you said codependency and you mentioned sugar and you mentioned these other things. Like, did you find that out later in your recovery about the codependency and the perfection? And those are things that were revealed later to you?
Yes. Oh, yes. Because even my addiction in general, I wasn't really doing anything that anybody else wasn't doing. So we started drinking at 15 and I thought I was the coolest because I got to be with the cool kids. And that's just what we did. And drinking made me get out of this. I didn't have to worry or think. And I felt like I belonged and I was floating and it just felt really, really good. I also started smoking at the same time. And cigarettes became my best friends that I could bring with me everywhere. And
Okay.
but no, being in that, I didn't think that I was an addict. I was just doing what everybody else was doing, you know.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that continued on all through high school, into college, where the drinking escalated. I love being interviewed like this and speaking, because I'm from Sweden. So I say really funny things sometimes and I can't find the right words. But everybody else were drinking a lot in college too. So again, I didn't really think that what I was doing was out of the norm. I finished college, got my degree, and landed an amazing job. Everything looked good. I checked all the boxes for what I was supposed to do. And then I went on a trip with some girlfriends of mine to the Dominican Republic when I was 23, 24 years old. And I told my friends, this is where I'm going to move when I retire. Came home from that trip. My grandfather had died. And that opened something up in me, like a whole other can of worms. I wasn't sad. I felt mad that he got away.
Okay.
And I couldn't really understand why. Because since I wasn't believed when I was 7, I had buried that memory so far, so deep inside. So I didn't really know what had happened. But what happened was that it made me want to stop and get off the conveyor belt of this life that I was on. I was just so unhappy. It looked fine on the surface. It looked fine.
And
But
how old were you?
24, yeah, around
24. Okay.
24. And I started saving all my money. I had moved back in with my parents after college, and instead of getting an apartment and doing all the things that I was supposed to do, I started saving for this trip. I was going to travel around the world with my friend. And I asked for a leave of absence of this new job that I got. And the HR rep was like, no, you can't do that. And that doesn't seem like a good choice. I'm like, no, probably not, but I'm going to go and I would love to come back in 6 months. And she's like, no, that's not going to happen. So I'm like, well, then I quit. And she's told me, you're never going to get another job. And I thought every time I got another job after that, I would think of her. But, as they say, wherever you go, there you are. So we went on this trip. It was beautiful. We were in Mexico and we ended up back in the Dominican Republic. And to make it look a little bit more okay on the surface, I took Spanish lessons. And I was then able to order drinks in Spanish. So that was cool. Because that's basically all we did. And then at the end of that 6 months, we quickly kind of ran out of money. So we didn't leave the Dominican Republic. We just loved it there. I met the man that was going to become my husband. So the next couple of years after that, we traveled again. Wherever I went, there I was. So we partied through Malaysia, Thailand. We worked in Greece and Spain and ended up in Omaha. That's where my husband is from. And I think I had kind of a normal life there for a while, but again, like my addiction always looked it didn't look out of the norm. Like being in Omaha, I just did what everybody else did. We worked Monday through Friday. Sometimes we would go out on Wednesdays. I just never wanted to go home. So then come Friday and Saturday, it was like drinking until I blacked out. But everybody else was drinking a lot too, but maybe not quite as much as I did. But every Sunday, I'm like, I'm done. I want to quit. I would like Google, am I an alcoholic? But I didn't check all the boxes. really confusing, a really confusing time for me. And also, like you mentioned, I didn't realize that until now, years later, that I was not maybe an alcoholic as much as a codependent. So, not doing what everybody else was doing was almost impossible for me, because that would mean that I was an individual. It would mean that I mattered. It would mean that, what I wanted to do mattered. So that was just off the table. So I just kept running, kept doing what everybody else was doing. And it wasn't until years later that I went out with my husband and some friends. We were going to go to a concert. I had been looking forward to this concert for a really long time. But Samantha came. Samantha is who I named my addictive personality. And she's the life of the party. Yeah. So what happened was that we came to this venue. It was outside, and when the alcohol we brought ran out, Samantha just started making new friends because they had more. But what was different about this particular night was that usually my husband would get me home. So we could drink, Samantha and I could drink however much we needed, because he would always get me home. And this wasn't something he talked about. This was just the way it was. And my husband, I guess you can call him a normie. He would drink, and then he would feel bad, and so he would stop.
Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I hear people do that. I don't know. For me, it wasn't like that. If I had drank to a point where I would feel physically ill, I would go throw up, and then I would go back to the bar and order, Red Bull vodka. It would work like a charm every time. This particular night, we got off the train, and I told my husband, I want to go, let's go to a bar. Like, the night is young. And this time he said no. And I just remember arguing back and forth and stumbling into the night at this really sleepy suburb where we lived. And the rest I don't really remember. And waking up the next morning was my rock bottom, because in the past, my husband and I, after I would wake up, I would just feel like crap Sunday morning, whatnot. And he would help calm down the anxiety. I call it playing like a sad game of hangover clue. We would sit together and talk about, then you said this, then you did that. You may want to call this person because you did XYZ. So he would be able to calm me down, because as a people pleaser, codependent, highly anxious, empathetic, highly sensitive person, every day without drinking, I'm like constantly hyper vigilantly aware of how everybody else is feeling. So then when Samantha would come out, she didn't give a shit about anybody. She would be funny. And my husband would often tell me that that was it. I'd just been funny. Yes, you were dancing and singing on top of the bar. You kept singing because if you did sing more karaoke, you got a free drink. So you kept doing that. It got exceedingly louder and louder. So I would basically just make a giant fool out of myself. That's basically it. But
So
this,
in the next morning, he always filled in your blanks for you.
yes, yeah, he filled in the blanks. So this morning he couldn't do that because he hadn't been there, and I had this flash of just like a green lush lawn. Just like, did I fall asleep? Did I pass out in one of the neighbors' yards? Like, I don't know. Probably, maybe. And that to me, it just scared me. Like, I don't remember what happened. Anything could have happened to me. And at that point, I had 2 kids at home. Like, why would I do this to them? Like, what was going on? Like, why would I do this to myself? But I didn't know how to quit. I didn't know how to stop that that roller coaster. I didn't know how to get off.
So it's, yeah, that point where you know you need to stop. You don't want to have another drink, but you don't know how not to have another drink.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's what I felt was so jarring for me, because I didn't feel like I could reach out for help. I didn't feel like I could go to rehab, or I didn't feel like I can go to AA, because Google had told me I didn't have a problem, you know?
Right.
So
Okay.
my addictive personality, Samantha, would whisper in my ear that they're just gonna laugh you out the room, like, don't be silly, don't be a nerd, you're fine.
Right.
So, so reaching out
Right.
for help
Right.
doesn't seem like an option.
Yeah, I can relate to that 100%.
Mhm.
100%. It just seems, I remember sitting on the back porch of my brother's house, and I was looking through a directory of rehabilitation centers, and I knew I needed to go, inside of me, but I thought, in the next thing in my mind was, they're too expensive. You're not going to go to that. And I walked inside, and I had another number of years. But I could have walked inside and asked for help, and anybody would have went over there. Everybody in that house would have helped me in any way possible, but I just didn't know how to ask.
Mm. Mm. Mhm.
So, what would you say to anybody listening that is thinking that they may have a problem with alcohol, but they lack the ability to ask?
Yeah. I think if you want to quit now in this time and age, you can, there's so much help out there, and it's online. So if you're in any shape or form worried that you'll be laughed out the door, or what are people going to think, or anything like that, you can go to these meetings online. You can use a different name. You don't even have to turn on your camera, and you can just listen. And what I do right now is because at one point I did talk to a person who was in the recovery community here where I live. And one of the first things she said was, "So what did you move on to?"
Ooh.
Because I told her I had been sober for, at that point, 5 years. And that was her first question. "So what did you move on to?" I'm like, "What do you mean? I quit drinking."
Mhm.
And she's like, "Okay, well, tell me about what you do in a normal day." I'm like, "Well, I go to the gym, and and I actually just fainted because I had been working out too hard." She's like, "Oh, okay,
So you
good.
moved on to working out.
Yeah,
So was she referring to putting down one addiction and picking up another?
yes."
Okay.
And she also gave me my first copy of Codependent No More.
By Melody Beatty. Beatty.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent book.
Hmm. And that's the first time I heard about codependency. I had never heard of that before. So digging into that, that's where I did check all the boxes. Like, if I would have Googled, "Am I codependent?" I would have checked most of those boxes, but I had never heard of that before. So that's what I feel is a little bit of my mission now too, is to spread the word about this, what I feel is my underlying addiction, which is codependency. And then I have used alcohol, food, sugar, cigarettes, over exercising, um, workaholicism, when you work too much. I've just used all these different things, almost like pacifiers, to numb this like core addiction of not being enough.
Wow. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's interesting because when the your latest post that I saw on your Instagram, which I follow, as you spoke about codependency.
Mhm.
And I thought that was incredible because that has since come up in my life with
Mm.
18 years of sobriety, having never attributed that word to anything in my life prior to this week. And then I saw
Mm.
your reel that said that, and I thought, wow, this is interesting because if we have a new name, we have perhaps a new avenue of solutions, right?
Yes.
So I think that's great, and I love that you spoke out loud about it.
Mhm. Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. For me, it was, awareness is key. Like, how can you And what they say in the meetings and in the rooms and the books is like codependency is this like deeply rooted belief system that we may not even be aware of. There's so many beautiful, I highly recommend anybody who thinks that maybe they're an addict or struggle with drinking to check out coda.org, because there are so many meetings, like every half hour, there's a new meeting that's starting. And also if you're, AA, of course, is online as well. And there's also so many other sober communities that are online these days. And it's so beautiful. You can just go in and listen and just know that you're not alone, never alone.
Yeah. That's very true. I think that's more true now since COVID had happened. Everybody was introduced to the virtual sobriety community, and a lot of people stayed there. And I love it. I think they do an incredible job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for that. It's CODA, CODA.org.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you woke up that morning and you weren't sure exactly what had happened or where you were, and your husband did not fill in the blanks for you, what happened after that? Something change that day?
Basically, I think that was the first time that I connected with my higher power, which I call the universe. And I just felt so helpless. So I basically just said, help. I don't know. I don't know what to do. Like, how do I get off this roller coaster? And in my case, the universe answered my prayer with a long awaited third pregnancy. So
Wow.
I got pregnant, and I would do anything for my children. Like, I would treat myself like shit, but I will do absolutely anything for my children. So having another living being in my body, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. I started treating myself for the first time with respect. I started going to yoga. I would get the occasional massage. I even took swimming lessons just because I started asking myself, what do I like to do? Like, who am I? Who is Kristine? You know,
Mm-hmm.
those 9 months were just such a beautiful, beautiful gift. And the reason I ended up getting all the way up to 5 years sobriety on my own also was that Edna, my sweet little girl, that I had, came out with sensory issues. So she was like still very, very attached to me. With my previous two kids, if I had one of those hangovers that Samantha would bring, Tim could easily watch the kids the next day. I would just have stay in bed. Mom's not feeling well. Absolutely awful. But they would be okay with my husband taking care of them. For Edna, that was not an option. We were like glued to each other's side. Like, I have a picture of me trying to close the bathroom door, and you see her little hand like underneath the.
So sweet. Uh-huh.
And being in the middle of that was really, really hard as well, because you can't really think when somebody is that attached to you.
Sure.
So I knew that I needed to step up my self-care in order to be able to help her, help me.
Mm-hmm.
So and also during my pregnancy, I had started seeing a therapist that had introduced me to Tosha Silver, which her book is called Outrageous Openness. So I just started getting more. Outrageous Openness is her book. It's
Oh,
beautiful.
that's a great title.
Yeah. And it's just about trusting that you're never alone, that your higher power is always with you. And I will start also, at the request of my therapist, take one day a week, because I am a full-time mom, but I would take one day a week where I would do something just for me, and just start to get to know myself. Like, who am I? What do I like to do? And starting to know that I matter, because when I didn't fill my own cup, I couldn't take care of Ed, and I couldn't take care of my kids. So shifting that whole narrative around self-care being selfish, I had to put on that oxygen mask on myself first to even have a chance to take care of anybody else. But it wasn't until we were in Evanston, Chicago at that time. And it wasn't until we moved down here to Florida that I met a community of women who are also in recovery. And that's really where I feel like the recovery finally
Took hold.
actually started. Yeah.
Mhm. What characteristics of what kind of personalities did those women have and bring to your life that you found support from them that you didn't find in other people?
Oh, unconditional love for themselves, like
Wow.
self-esteem. They knew in their core that they mattered. I remember it's so funny in hindsight, 2020. My friends had started a recovery group at a beautiful place here in town. And the reason I went was to support them. It's so beautiful to be codependent when you surround yourself with beautiful people that are trying to help others.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I would go to these meetings and how these women looked at me when I would arrive always took me by surprise because they would smile with their whole face, their eyes would light up. I would almost want to look behind me to be like, what, me? Why do you look so happy to see me? Do you know who I am?
Yes.
Just
Hmm.
with that love, like, you're welcome here. You matter. We want to hear what you have to say. Come in, sit, you know.
Wow. We want to hear what you have to say.
Mhm. Yeah, so beautiful. Being just willing to let people in. But I've in the past have been attracted to people that may not have had my best interest in mind. So it's also, you have to be a little weary of who you surround yourself with, especially in the beginning of sobriety, because
Sure.
I think a lot of people that I tried to share my concerns with didn't want to hear it, because I think that we hold up mirrors for each other. And if somebody says, I think I might be an alcoholic, it's a lot easier to push you down than to hear what's kind of being reflected back to you. So
Right.
I want to urge people to, maybe if you feel like your intuition keeps screaming at you that you do have a problem and you have reach out again and again and again and again. Just keep asking for help. It's not
Yes.
a
Yeah.
one time fix.
Sure. And, I found that until I got around people who were versed in the disease of alcoholism, I really had a hard time identifying what it was or if I even had a problem. So it
Mm.
wasn't until I surrounded myself with people who knew about it that I actually began to learn about what that disease was and looked like. And then I
Yes.
could really make that decision on myself as to what
Mhm.
direction, yeah, as to whether I had that or not and what I had to do to get better.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, right? Just find the people around you that are maybe a couple of years ahead of you. So people that you admire that have done the work, and just, they don't have to have it all figured out, but they maybe have a couple of years of sobriety now. Like, how did they do that? I had the gift of working as the photographer on a book called Soul to Sisterhood, and there multiple, I think, I can't remember the exact number now, I think almost 30 women that share in that book about their lives and their struggles. And there were a couple in that book that shared about sobriety and going through addiction. And just the way that I was brought up, there were a lot of things like, we don't talk about it. So at first I couldn't believe that they were saying these things out loud, like, shh, someone's gonna hear.
Right.
What are people gonna think?
Right.
are you sure you want to, you know that this is being recorded? It's going to go into a book. Like, I just wanted to be like,
Yes.
because I was so
Yes.
scared for them, because that's just how I grew up. Like, whatever's happening behind closed doors, we don't talk about that. Just long as you look put together, everything's fine.
Mm.
Don't be so
Mhm.
sensitive, you know.
Right.
But
Right.
I was so inspired by these women sharing their stories so courageously. So it made me
Yes.
find my voice. So I reached out to one of these women. I'm like, I think I might have a problem. You really, really inspired me. Thank you for sharing that. And she's like, oh, let me tell you, this is what I did, you know?
Uh-huh. And then they helped you.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, you
Mhm.
know? It really is. It's
Mhm.
I don't even have words for the recovery community and how they show up for one another. I've never seen anything like it. It's amazing. How fortunate are we to be surrounded by people who understand and, go the extra mile to make sure you're heard and okay and getting on with your life the way you're supposed to live it,
Mhm.
you know?
And what I've realized too in recovery is that the addiction is going to do everything it can to convince you that you are alone. So
Yes.
what I've realized too is that I have an addiction to suffering, to being that victim, to feeling less than. Because when I do that, when I feel like the victim, I will treat myself with one of the, you know, soothing tools that Samantha thinks is a good idea, which is never ever good for me. But and
Yes.
she's very, very sneaky. So sometimes it can take me a while to see what she is kind of onto. And one example of that was like in my addiction, I would always leave, but it was under the picture of an adventure. You know, so if I wasn't feeling fulfilled in one place, I would physically either go on a vacation or I would move. So coming down here to where I felt was home, we moved a lot in town, and now I'm in my forever home. You know
Mm.
what Samantha did that it took me a while? She started picking fights with Tim. And she would go on Zillow looking for one bedroom apartments, because how scary is it to be trapped, to have to stand still long enough to feel your feelings and to have it feelings bubble through you? It's a lot
Yes.
easier than to create another distraction, another problem to be solved. I'm really good at finding places to live, but how could I get out of this? But
Well,
then you have,
what a great awareness that you have, that you identified that for exactly what it was so
Mhm.
that you could not honor that.
Yeah. And I did not do that alone. That's really, really what
Sure.
I want to emphasize, because asshole.
You right, you may have pursued a one bedroom.
Oh
But
yeah.
that's why when you
Yeah.
reach out to other women, they hold you to the truth, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
And yeah,
And it
they
was
hold you to
like
the truth.
just in meetings and hearing other people share, and in that mirror, and being open to that, seeing what other people do and seeing, "Oh, that's what I'm doing. I don't want to do that. How do I stop? Okay, thank you for the awareness. Wow, that was a sneaky one. You know?
Right. Very good. Yeah. Wow.
We have been here now for will be 3 years.
Yay. And you love it. You're forever home. You're not leaving for
I
now.
am not leaving. I love it here. I it's it feels like you were saying earlier, like a privilege, and I'm so grateful to be able to stop and do this work. But it takes so much courage, and hiding and running away. It it's easier. Like right now, like my husband and I, not because we're having issues, but so we won't have issues. We do couples therapy. I go to a therapy to a therapist for me to keep healing and keep digging, uh, peeling away the next layer of the onion, whatever that might be. I have a coach to help me write this book because I know that I need help, and that it's nothing wrong with asking for help. We're actually stronger in community. And thank you so much for creating this podcast. I've listened to your other episodes, and just everyone has a nugget of wisdom that's like, oh no, I see that in myself. I wasn't aware. Thank you for saying that. Okay. So then another layer, another like, oh my, I didn't know I did that. So how we can just like help each other in community instead of just going like there are all these trauma responses, right? The freeze, flee, fight, fawn. Mine is usually freeze, like in the form of depression, or or flee with my constant moving.
Your constant movement, yes. And I did that as well. You were in Thailand, I was in Indonesia. You know, Singapore, really, I mean, just years of
Yeah.
bouncing around different countries, for the
Hmm.
same exact reasons that you had identified.
Hmm.
And you had said it beautifully. You said, wherever you go, there you are.
Hmm.
You know, if we move today, we move in health and we bring everybody with us.
Yes,
We're
yeah.
not departing and leaving to go get better and come back whole, because
Mhm.
we're leaving that way now. That's the difference over here.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so beautiful too now, even though home for me is not in Sweden. I felt like I want to say that there was a pull for me to go
Mhm.
somewhere else, and I just didn't know where that was. So I am also grateful for the travel that I did do because it brought me home. I just didn't know that it was going to be in Florida. I knew it was going to be somewhere where there were no winters because seasonal depression
Wow.
really affected me. I it was like 6 months of the year where could hardly just get out of bed. It was just not working for me. So I am so grateful that I have landed in where I feel is paradise on earth for me.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I do feel like the addiction brought me here. So, and that's a little bit what I talk about in the book too, is that having an addictive personality can actually be an asset because Samantha, she is fierce. She is not going to take no for an answer. She's like, you want to do what now? You want to move to Florida? Okay, here. We're gonna sell the house. We're gonna get jobs. We're gonna find schools, and bang, 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 done. Took her 2 months, and we were like down here. I'm like, ooh, that's pretty cool.
So she has some great attributes as well, right?
Yes,
Yes.
for sure. I think the
So I
key is
always say,
finding, yeah.
I have this in my back pocket in case I need to pull it out one day, some of the traits that I came in here with that I don't need on a daily basis anymore. But
Mm,
they're there, you
mm,
know, whether it was for survival purposes when I was traveling solo or trying to stay alive during an active alcoholism, and we could pull those out whenever we want to, but we really don't need them today.
mm,
They're part of us. They're just muted.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like in recovery too, and now allowing myself to stop, that my inner child is coming out a little bit. Like, is it safe? It's safe. Well, I have so much to tell you. Like,
Oh my goodness.
it's so beautiful because I also get to do a lot of the inner child work and just being like, we made it. You're not in there,
Yeah.
you're not in danger anymore. You're actually in the body of a 47-year-old woman now. You're no
Yes.
longer seven or had more traumas growing up. You're no longer a child. You are an adult and you did it. You got out of there. You did it. I'm so proud of you.
Oh my goodness,
You know?
yes. The beautiful thing is that I sit here with 18 years, you sit there with 9, right?
Mhm.
And we are still both learning how to be our best selves, and we are willing to do that and look at the hard stuff. And even though it's so many years later, to not be so surprised that it's there, and to know that the greater good is to get through it, and so that we can continue to evolve and be better parents and be better wives and be better friends and daughters. And it's an incredible journey to be on, to put down things that hurt you and sit in yourself. And I'm so grateful that you came on here, that you're here today sharing your heart, because it's really not only probably helping so many other people, but it's helping me tremendously for where I am at. And I am very grateful.
Oh, thank
So
you for
thank
saying
you,
that.
and continue to share anything you'd like to.
Well, I hear all that and thank you. The reason my big why for doing this is for my children. My children are 15, 12, and 8 now, and they are my why. They are my everything. I can see now, especially going through the steps in Codependence Anonymous, that I'm still not the best version of myself that I can be. I have so much anger in me. I don't know how to handle a lot of obstacles when I don't take care of myself. But I'm becoming more and more aware. And with every meeting I go to, with every therapy session I go to, I heal a little bit more for them. I had this beautiful experience this weekend. We were folding laundry together, and I had just learned how to do a feelings journal at the end of the day. So I had the kids share about how they were feeling and what was going on in their lives. And one of the feelings is joy. That's usually pretty easy. But then we got down to anger and guilt and loneliness. And I asked my son, who's 12, do you feel guilty? I've asked you a couple of times to change the sheets in your room. Is that guilt you feel? And he said, no, it's fear. And I'm like, can you elaborate on that? He's like, yeah, I'm scared that you and dad are going to yell at me. And then I got to have this beautiful conversation with him, because my husband had been traveling, and we have three dogs. One is really, really old and pees all over the place. On a good day, pee is just pee. On this particular day, pee was a stab in my codependent, people pleasing, trying to do everything heart, and I lost my shit. I woke up that morning. I was already a little bit late. This dog, Elsa, had managed to pee not in one spot, but in 5 spots. My son had accidentally stepped in it and walked all over the place. And I just lost, like, insanity city next. I started yelling from like in some sort of, I don't know, like, just came from the bottomless pits of hell. This scream, like, I can't do this like this. I'm going to kill the dog. I'm vegan. I am never hurting any animals, not my own. I don't even eat animals. So, but that anger, like, it just bubbled up in me. I couldn't control it. And I can still see my son standing in that, not feeling like he could move because he was literally in pee and he couldn't step anywhere, and just had to watch his mom just lose her shit, like, and saying these things. So in that moment, as we were folding laundry, I get to tell him, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. That must have been really, really scary for you. It was not your fault. And next time dad travels, or next time, every day, my goal is to take care of me so I can take care of you. So what bubbles up is love, because this is not okay. And I'm really sorry that that happened to you.
Oh, yeah.
That's where recovery is for me. It's,
Yes.
yes, I am going to keep making mistakes, but they become fewer and they further apart. But I'm going to own it. I'm going to own my mistakes, and I'm going to apologize, and I'm going to make amends, to not only apologize. I'm going to make shifts in my life so it doesn't happen again, because I'm always evolving. I'm always learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want my kids to know that I'm there for them. I love them for who they are, not because of what they do, just for unconditionally. I tell them probably they're going to be in therapy in years to come because their mom told them, I love you too many times.
I really love for who they are and not for what they do.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I remember in early sobriety that I was told, all the defects I have, the anger, the inability to believe, the unhappiness, the impatience are all going to change to the opposite. And those negative traits are going to go into the background, and their opposite is going to come to the forefront, and that's going to be who you become. And I was really excited about that. And that really proved to be true. And it's what you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes time and it takes practice on a daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where the grace comes in.
I have this week is going to be very, very busy. So I am supposed to do more than I usually do. And my husband said it's very important that, Henrik gets to this special after school activity. It's very important that Edna gets to this activity. And I said, you know what? What is even more important is that if I take them to these activities, that I am in a good mental state. Because having a mom huffing and puffing, yelling, blowing up at you just existing in the car, it's not worth it. So we're going to see if they make it, if I take them to these activities because it's in the best of all of our experience this week. Or maybe this week we won't go. And you know what? That's going to be okay. Because what are they going to remember?
Right.
What are
You're
they going to
right.
know in their hearts?
That's really true. Mm-hmm.
Not that they made it to all the soccer, gymnastics, dance, whatever. They're going to remember if their mom lost her shit again, or if they had a cozy night in front of the TV. That's one of the things that sometimes the anger can bubble up in me, is that growing up, I didn't feel like I felt like I had to take care of the grown-ups around me. I had to tiptoe around on eggshells to see, how are they feeling today? Who do I have to be today so there's no explosion? Which one of my many personalities is needed today? I can see my youngest daughter look at me that way, and it's not okay, because I'm the adult. So if she's looking at me with concernment in her eyes, like, okay, time to check in with myself. What some self-care I need right now? Maybe I need to take a bath. Maybe I need to go meditate. Maybe I need to go take a walk. Maybe I just need to sit down in the quiet for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not her job to make sure that I don't blow up.
Correct, right. It's not their job.
But what I've noticed is that when the voices in my head use words as should, it's not my intuition speaking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If the words come in love, that's my intuition. So if the voice is saying you should do this, you should take Henrik to this class, because otherwise, that's not my intuition. That's fear speaking. I didn't grow up in any sort of religion, really. We would go to church around Christmas. Maybe Sweden is Lutheran. I appreciated all the religious holidays because it meant I could stay home from school. But there was really no spirituality growing up. I have, in recovery, I have something I call my goddess can.
Uh-huh.
It's literally an old recipe box from Target. It's about, this size. And if there's something that I can't figure out, I scribble it down on a piece of paper and I ask for help.
I love that.
And it's so beautiful to see how the universe, my higher power shows up for me. The problem is never solved in any shape or form as I would have tried to figure it out.
Seeing as your husband had the role of filling in the blanks and you're no longer drinking,
Mm-hmm.
how has your marriage improved as a result of you being sober?
I have a lot of ideas. And as a all or nothing person, um, I want to do things right away. So I think in a lot of ways, my husband is just kind of hanging on to my my coattail. Because what happened also in recovery is that we realized that my son was allergic to dairy. And again, I would do everything for my kids. So I made it my mission, Samantha and I, to learn everything about this crazy new way of living without dairy. Because, like I said, I grew up in Sweden. So we had dairy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. I didn't think that I could live without this, right? So I read all the books, watched all the documentaries, just started learning about this new impossible way of living. And then I got so inspired. So I wanted to go vegan overnight. And my husband was like, what's happening? What did you do today? I'm like, oh, well, we're getting rid of all the meat because it's poison. It gives you cancer. And he's like, stop. No. So I had to slow down a little bit and then slowly, like I share everything I learn in recovery with him. And I try to not change him as much as inspire him. So it took a long time, but now the whole household is vegan. And
Oh,
my
wow.
son and my husband both got rid of their asthma, which was absolutely beautiful. And I got rid of my seasonal allergies. I was going to go in and get shots, like daily shots, and I don't have that anymore. So
Wow.
uh, it's just now he doesn't have to fill in the blanks. He more just had to like keep up.
Oh, wow. Right. To your new ways. Oh, you change your. Wow, that's pretty phenomenal that you changed your whole house to be vegan. That's
Yeah.
impressive. That is. It's really interesting.
Yeah. And I think
Fascinating.
that as in everything, it's just staying in the step you're in. You don't have to go vegan overnight like Samantha wanted to do. It's like for me, it was also just like, how can I make chili without meat? I want to learn about that. Because then I realized like the flavors never came from the meat. It was like the garlic, the chili, the tomatoes, the onions. That's where the flavor was. It was never in the meat. So I'm like,
Oh, wow.
I just happened to have a whole vegan meal and it tasted good. What else can I do? So there's just like I feel like I had this pull to always keep learning. And
Mm.
once I peeled away the smoking layer, that just opened up a whole like, what else am I doing to poison myself?
Mm.
Because I had at some point given up, and I thought that I was going to smoke for the rest of my life because cigarettes were my best friend. So I was already killing myself. So it didn't really matter what I ate or drank because we're going to die anyway. And life is not worth living without cigarettes. So, but when I got past that, it's like, oh, what else am I doing? And that's where I started looking a little bit more on the alcohol too, and just kind of, but not really willing to touch it, but it was became more apparent. Mm-hmm. And then, once the alcohol was out of the picture, it's like, what else am I doing? I started to realize that I matter and that I want to be around for my kids. Again, they have really been like my why. So not necessarily having the love for myself to begin with, but I had this undying love for my kids. So I want to be there when they grow up. What if they have kids of their own? I want to be there for that. I want to be there if they want to get married. Like, oh my goodness, I have to start taking care of myself. Oh shit. And I feel like in the vegan community, just like in the recovery community, people have so much passion. So when you start listening to these people that are like, plants have protein. I'm like, plants have protein. What do you mean? What? So I don't have to eat animals? And then they're like, just the way they're sharing, when somebody's sharing and they're feeling inspired, you can see it in their eyes. So it's so this like addictive almost, like, right. For something new I can cling on to. So I'm going to read this book. And then I read that book in a day. And then I watched that and like, oh my goodness, there's so much to learn. And you're just like coming from joy and alignment, and you're inspired, you're with spirit. And then everything just becomes easy.
Yeah. Wow. I want more. When is your book coming out, The Unconventional Addict?
It's going to be in the spring or summer of 2024. I don't have an exact date just yet. Publishing a book is really, really scary, especially when it's a book like we're writing, that's coming from the heart. It's about showing the world that I'm not perfect. Like things that happened in my past, like what are they gonna think? What if I misunderstood the therapist? Maybe I got it all wrong. Obviously, I got it all wrong. How embarrassing! There's so many, like, again, crazy. Mm-hmm. The committee in here meets on the regular, convincing me that I should not let this nonsense out into the world, so they're trying everything to protect me. They're trying to keep me safe. But I really feel that the more I share, the more times I speak about my past and my addiction, and the easier it gets. And the shame cannot live here.
I would love to have you again as the book nears its publication date, so we can highlight you. And we do a featured author each month, and I would love to feature you then, so we can actually have a signed copy of your book go out to listeners.
Thank you.
If you want to connect with Kristine on Instagram, you can find her at Mom Vegan Love and explore her insights further on her website, momveganlove.com. You can find more about her book at theunconventionaladdict.com. So thank you so much, Kristine, for having the courage to come on and share your story. You've been an inspiration to so many.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Sober Living Stories podcast. If you have been inspired, consider subscribing and sharing with anyone who could use hope in their lives. Remember to stay tuned for more inspiring stories in the episodes to come. To view our featured author of the month or to become a guest yourself, visit www.jessicastepanovic.com.